and gentlemen, it's NCAA Lax Gameday here on a beautiful Saturday morning, February 8th, 2014. We are fired up this morning with a little final countdown to start. Johnny Devaya and Andrew Goldberg here. John, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good. Pumped up. The season is here. It's among us. Let's get ready to rock and roll, Andrew.
Yeah, season is the first official, well, I won't say the first official day, but it's the biggest day of the lacrosse season as it actually started last weekend. I know you did a great job on the radio broadcast for ILWT here on the Lacrosse Radio Network on Live 365, doing a little preseason action with St. John's and Hartford. But they also actually started the season with Delaware and High Point, as well as Lehigh and Furman last weekend. So, you know, Lehigh beat Furman 13-6, and Delaware beat High Point 10-3. Nothing real shocking there. But the biggest news, just to start off, also you can tweet at us at NCAA Lax Gameday, at GoldieBerg, at John_A_I Devaya, and like us on Facebook at NCAA Lax Gameday. But John, the biggest news last week was that former Cornell head coach Ben DeLuca was hired as a volunteer assistant coach by Duke Lacrosse. What are your thoughts?
I'd like to say it's like the Soviet Union adding possibly a bigger hydrogen bomb to their arsenal right now. And this was a great pick of a smart decision by John Danowski. I mean, DeLuca is going to be, on the sidelines for now until the summer when the next coaching carousel begins. And he'll land on his feet, but for now, obviously, he's probably going to be bouncing around now with Duke, maybe in the studio for ESPNU. But it's a very good hire. You basically have a talented individual, a very good coach now to help assess and keep the chemistry, keep this team intact, as obviously, the favorites to repeat as the national champions only get stronger.
Yeah, I think, all right, here's my take on everything with what's happened. So when we first started together, 4, 5, 6 weekends ago, whatever it was, we opened the show and our show by doing this, by analyzing what had happened to Cornell. Still, there's been no explanation as to why he got fired. And my comparison is, look, Duke is a fantastic academic university. If they have no problem hiring Ben DeLuca, then why didn't Cornell just keep him? It makes it seem as if Ben DeLuca was a scapegoat in all this. Like, just because he was the head coach and he was, like, quote-unquote, the face of the program, he was the one who was, scapegoated out. He was fired, and they're, like, starting anew. But Duke, who is just as good academically, better lacrosse-wise, as an institution, and they had no problem bringing him in amid all this, amidst all this, drinking, hazing incidents, and they bring him in, and also Team USA had no problem having him on the sideline. So I don't see what the problem is, and I don't see why he should have been fired at Cornell.
Yeah, I don't want to open the can of worms again. I'll just go with what I said the first time, that it's still very shady to me, and I think that the Cornell Athletic Administration had their own agenda for letting go of DeLuca. But nonetheless, we know that he's a talented coach. We've seen all the alumni and all the players that came to his defense upon the hiring, and again, it only helps Duke even more. And we know that DeLuca is going to land on his feet somewhere. And the person that hires the hot commodity that he is going to be very fortunate come 2015.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm not trying to, bash Cornell, obviously. They have their agenda. It's just, it just seems weird to me. So from a pure lacrosse standpoint, what do you think he's going to bring to Duke that, they lose Joe Stanowski, who goes to, who's he going to? It's not Hartford. It's a small NJIT, I think. He's going to as an assistant coach because he was a volunteer last year. They say he's going to be a defensive coach. What do you think he's going to bring defensively to Duke?
I think he'll help shore up the nooks and crannies of the team. Some things that might you have to question going in. Obviously, the health of Jordan Wolf, for example, because he's had some issues along the way. Obviously, they still have Fowler at face-offs. Defensively, I still think they're they're going to be pretty good for the most part. I think what DeLuca will do mostly on the back end is just maybe shore up, make the communication a little bit better, have them play just a lot tougher overall.
Yeah, I mean, granted, they have 3 MLL picks in Lob and Dupree and Hips, and they obviously bring back Turry in goal, Kyle Turry.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be perfectly fine defensively. I think, like you said, it's just going to be a lot of shoring up maybe some communication issues or shoring up, things here or there just to make them that much better than they already are. As you know, both you and I had agreed on before in saying when we did our previews of top defensive units, they're one of the top defensive units in the nation. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's just going to shore up everything and really bring, I don't know, you can't really bring more professionalism to that university. But,
I don't think more leadership is a bad thing at
right.
all. So I think we can agree that Duke will. I think it's safe to say they'll have another deep run in them probably with this hiring.
Yeah, and they really should. And it'll be actually very interesting, like you said, where he winds up next year as either an assistant coach, like a high assistant coach somewhere, or if he takes over like I don't know, does he take over a small program that's just starting up, or does he go to a big program that's still kind of rebuilding?
Imagine if he takes over one of the soon-to-be Big Ten programs. That would be huge.
Who
I'm
would
not.
take over? I mean, he won't take over like Maryland or Hopkins or
No, that
Ohio
those two
State.
are off. I mean, maybe Rutgers if they want to see a change in direction. Nick Myers is staying in Ohio, obviously, and
Right.
I don't want to say I don't say John Paul in Michigan because he means so much to them given the history with their club program. Obviously, I'm just like throwing it out there. It would be
Yeah.
big and very good for the sport of having a guy like him. I remember Tambroni when he went to Penn State, for example. That
Right.
started opening things up a lot more for the sport in terms of like the bigger programs.
Yeah, but that was I mean, you could see that because Penn State was like kind of a top 20 team, but they really never took that next step. They were like on the fringe, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you would say. Um, I think it would be really cool. I know there's a lot of other elements that go into this, but if he started in like he was a big hire in like an SEC school or a Big 12 or a SEC, I mean, sorry, or a Pac-12 school, something like that. I know that's like way down the pipeline, but that's just wishful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, Ben DeLuca gets hired at Duke. Duke will play this Sunday, open their season this Sunday at Jacksonville, which we'll preview later. But let's go back to the week that was in college lacrosse, starting last weekend on Saturday as Delaware played High Point. Really no surprises here. Delaware beats High Point 10-3. They'll play again today. Much tougher matchup against a Bucknell team that you actually really like. I'm behind you on there. I'm not going to say that I discovered them and say I really like them too. I'll give you the credit for that. But I think it's going to be a tough matchup today. But also going back to last weekend, what did you, I guess, take away from Delaware and High Point?
High Point obviously has, they're going to have a little more pains as they continue to grow as a program. Delaware, ho hum performance, good win for them overall. Showing some good depth of the midfield, I will say. They had some good contributions from a lot of different players, something that they pained with last year. And Delaware usually is a team that plays well between the 30s, so it was important for them to establish that their key contributors are going to be those big midfielders for them.
Yeah, and the biggest midfielders that are coming back for them as they lost their two best ones last year is Connor McRoy and Brian Carmondi. Both guys had, or I should say, McRoy had a goal and 2 assists. Carmondi had a goal and an assist. Connor Peekser, their goalie, actually had a really strong game. He played well last year. He didn't start at the beginning of the season. But he took over for their starter and played well for the rest of the year. I think their defense could be an underrated unit heading in. But like you said, not a lot of surprise here. High Point's going to struggle, like you said, and Delaware I think it's going to be a close game today. The second game that we're going to look at is Lehigh and Furman. Furman, obviously, first-year program with head coach Richie Meade coming over from Navy, also the head coach for Team USA, which just made their roster announcement. What do you take away from that game? Lehigh 13, Furman 6.
I expect similar thing with Delaware. I think, obviously Lehigh is expected to win. I don't see how they couldn't in this. For them, I think it's going to be important just to establish, some important, just how they played, honestly, overall, continuing it through that. Obviously, they lose a lot of people from last season. So I think games like this early on are important to set up an identity and see, who are some guys that can step up.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, look, we actually, this is what I kind of take away from it. I know you can't have moral victories. Like, coaches don't preach moral victories when they lose. But I think for a program like Furman, this is kind of a moral victory. Like, look, Lehigh's like a top 15-ish program right now due to what Kevin Cassis has done there. Back-to-back Patriot League titles. And for a first game, I think this was a good outing for them. 7 goals technically is a blowout in lacrosse.
Yeah.
But I think they can take away some things. Obviously, they have a lot of things to work on. They'll get a couple of recruiting classes in. Lehigh, I think, for us, it's, I guess, like you said, who's going to step up? Who's going to play well for them? And where are they going to go in this third year, especially with Loyola coming in to the Patriot League now? It makes it that much tougher for them to three-peat, as well as Bucknell being in the conference. So
yeah,
I think that'll be really interesting going forward.
2 guys that stood out to me in this game. One for Lehigh was sophomore Reed Weber. He had a hat trick on the day, 3 goals on 5 shots. He looked pretty good down low. For Furman, 2 guys for me were their goaltender, Fraser Kinsley, who had 12 saves in the loss. He was very active. Lehigh took a lot of shots, but he stood his ground for the most part. And I thought Graham Dabbs as well. 2 goals, 1 assist. 2 turnovers, though, key timing. I think Lehigh converted on both of those as well. So obviously a few things for them. They had 15 turnovers in the game. Not bad, but I mean, that's something you want to cut down early as a program. Can't play clean, full lacrosse, but I mean, as long as you limit the opportunities of an opponent, that's one way to start growing as a young program.
Yeah, and one's kind of like not startling statistic, but Matt Polion only had 6 saves, 500 save percentage. I don't know how much he really had to do there. Granted, the score. One other name real quick, Cody Ferraro had 3 goals and an assist for Lehigh, and Patrick Corbett had a hat trick too. So I guess those are the guys who are gonna step up this year for Lehigh. And I think the biggest game of the week, and maybe the game of the year, just right out of the gates for us this season as we look into the college lacrosse crystal ball, was Virginia and Loyola. I mean, John, what a freaking game, man! Virginia won 14-13. But here's the thing: they were up 12-4 in the third after the third quarter. So everyone's like, "Oh, it's a blowout. This game's over." There's going to be huge questions about Loyola, especially after the last couple of years they had. Loyola storms back, comes back to take the lead with, I believe it was like 30, 40 seconds left, I want to say. I mean, I'm just guessing here.
18 seconds they got the go-ahead goal with.
Okay, so they get the goal with 18 seconds left. They're now up 13-12. Virginia comes back down, and they take a shot. The ball goes – it doesn't go out. Their goalie, who they actually replaced, which we'll get into really quickly, Pat McInerney takes over for Jack Runkle in goal. He saves the shot, but it goes a little wide. I forget who gets the ball, but he spins it around. I think it was to, Van Ardsdale. Van Ardsdale, tries dodging, gets doubled, moves it up top, goes over who passed it? I think it was Pinnell that passed it to Tucker. Tucker takes a shot and beats McInerney literally at the buzzer. Then the referees, in what seems like an eternity from all reports, are going back and forth, because obviously they don't have instant replay in college lacrosse, and they're going, is this a goal, is it not? Goal stands. People are going crazy. I saw the video. It looks like Tucker is like talking trash to the Loyola like bench like after the goal. Then in overtime, James Pennell, Rob Pennell's little brother, comes over the top, just runs across the top and scores. And McInerney actually gets a good piece of it, and it just trickles into the goal. Virginia wins 14-13 in overtime. John, fantastic game.
Easily. I don't think any of us saw that ferocious comeback from Loyola coming. They were just so – I didn't get to see the game live. I saw some of the highlights, some of the replay, and they just looked like they were out of it. They looked like they were down and out entering that fourth quarter, but they just slowly got momentum back on their side. And, I mean, credit to their face-off man. I mean, he did an absolute job of controlling the dot, 6 of 9 in the fourth quarter. Able to keep the game in check for them and gave them constant possession. I mean, I just don't know what happened to Virginia's defense, obviously. We talked about coming in. They were supposed to have as Starja mentioned it before, that he was expecting good things from his defense this year. And I'll be honest, man, I think if you're a Virginia fan, you're happy that they got the win at the end. But, I mean, you have to question what the heck happened in that fourth quarter, because, 9 goals is a lot of goals. At least one of those or two of those, they could have done something about, I'm sure.
Well, John, you raised a good question. What exactly did happen in that fourth quarter? For our listeners, here come the stats. I'm going to play, the Schwab here and give you some statistics. So, obviously, you and I both know the importance of face-offs in college lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
They were getting dominated early. Looking at the box score, Loyola was getting dominated. They switched face-off men. As we were talking before the show came on, Blake Burkhart was the face-off man for Loyola. He went 2 of 10. Terrible. Then they switched to this guy, Graham Savio, who goes 11 of 18. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Virginia is owning it. They're killing it at the face-off X, going 15 of 27. Mick Parks, he's doing a fantastic job. But in that pivotal fourth quarter, Loyola went 6 of 9 around the face-offs. So, great percentage. They're getting a lot of possessions. They got 15 shots off compared to Virginia's 5. The ground ball battle, which is also very important in lacrosse, 11-6 in Loyola's favor. Clears were even. Extra man opportunities were even. Turnovers, it was basically even. It was 12-9 Virginia. So they're getting shots off. They're coming back. And, just a little tangent, just about the goalie play. Neither of these goalies played well at all. Matt Barrett, he's a freshman. I guess that's expected. He's the number 25 ranked recruit out of last year's class. He had 8 saves for a 38 save percentage. On the flip side, as I mentioned, Jack Runkle played terribly. 21 save percentage, 3 saves on the afternoon. Literally any shot that Virginia was taking from the outside was going in on him. He just looked dreadful.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat McInerney comes in for the fourth quarter, basically. Sees 4 shots, makes 1 save. I guess the question is, for both teams, defensively, both teams were supposed to be pretty solid. You have Joe Fletcher, who's the only college player to make Team USA on Loyola's side. And then Virginia, Scott McWilliams, who's one of the best defensemen in the country, leading pretty solid defensive units, and both these teams just give up 14 and 13 goals. I don't know, as a fan of either team, that you feel too confident. Granted, it's the beginning of the year.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of I'm predicting that both coaches aren't going to be too happy with their teams this week at practice. There's probably going to be a lot of running, a lot of discussion on the defensive units to figure out exactly what happened and to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I agree with you, though, that Runkle did not play a good game at all. As for Barrett, I thought I was more impressed with him, honestly. Yes, having only stopping 8 of a lot of those shots, not good. And he could have made more, obviously, but I thought that down the stretch where his team needed, he did make some big saves. Here's the thing I'll throw an argument at. Loyola had the ball, remember, in the final 2 minutes of the game when they had tied it already. So they had the ball with under a minute. I forgot the exact time. Loyola takes a shot that Barrett makes an amazing save on with like probably 48 seconds. I'm just predicting. Um, so let's say that he doesn't make the save then, and we go to the faceoff then. Obviously, Virginia would have more time potentially, but who's to say that Virginia wins the faceoff? For all you know that Loyola might have won the faceoff with all that momentum. The desperation doesn't kick in maybe for Virginia yet. I mean, you don't know. Barrett had to make the saves when he had to. I mean, I think that I would have given him a C if I had to grade him. That's just my thought. I thought that he played big in the end, just to help them win. I think he contributed to Virginia winning in the end.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I'm being too harsh, but like, I don't know, like Division I goalies, like, I don't know, you're playing at this level, you should at least be making, I mean, for a bad game, for a really bad game for a goalie at Division I level, at like a team like Virginia, I mean, maybe my expectations are raised, but you got to be making bad game 45% of your saves at least. To his credit, he did, like you said, he did make big saves. He had 3 big saves in the fourth quarter, so it's not, how many saves you make, it's when you make them sometimes. So for Barrett, that's to his credit.
Mm-hmm.
Just to flip over to Loyola, I mean, you made a good point, just to go off your point. You made a good point about, what happens, because like we said, 6-9 at the faceoff X, which means that they're clearly getting a lot of momentum, 15 shots to 5 in Loyola's favor. Maybe Loyola gets a faceoff there, but just to go back to Loyola, Inside Lacrosse has these awesome features. For those of you listeners, you should go on and look at them. They interviewed every single coach in their top 20, and one of the interviews I watched was Coach Toomey, and he was talking about how Jack Runkle, he was very confident this year. He was really playing well, especially with the guys returning in front of him. But then he has a game like this, and then to make matters worse is you get pulled. And you and I were both talking before we went on here about how we both experienced times where we've gotten pulled and the mindset that you go through. I mean, it's the beginning of the season. Do you go back to Runkle? I mean, do you have to? Do you bring McInerney in and see what he has?
I think you got to give your starter another chance. I think that's just me, given what he's done for you in the past. I mean, you got to look at the schedule also, and just exactly how much the quality of opponents. I mean, this is not going to be the highest rated offense that he plays against. Don't forget, there's going to be tougher opponents. Let me pull up their schedule. Yeah, they're playing Penn State next, and they've got a pretty good attack unit. Then they got Towson, who's got Tom DiNapoli. And then you got, some lighter guys with Holy Cross and Lehigh. You got to keep him in the fire right now, just see what he can do. Then maybe towards the end of February, early March, if Runkle's not getting it done, then you switch over, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think you have to stay with him, especially just from how much you talked up to him and you make him a starter. I think you just have to go back to him in that second game and see what happens. And obviously, if he continues to fold, then you go with the younger guy, bite the bullet, and maybe for the future you look a lot better because the younger guy gets the experience and you move forward with that. So I mean, I guess. Oh, so last note here, I guess, before we hit a break and we'll go through predictions, and we also have a really cool announcement for our listeners about predictions and doing it with us. Is going to Virginia. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, you look at Virginia too. So their offense was actually really good. I mean, I think there were question marks about their offense this year, and also the direction of their program because they kind of didn't do too well last year.
Mm-hmm.
But James Pinnell had 4 goals and an assist. Cockerton had 3 goals, both from the attack unit. Van Ardsdale played well, and then from up top, Tucker and Emery combined for 5 points. So maybe their offense is going to have to carry them for a little bit, and as their young goalie gets it together.
Yeah, I would say that. I think if their offense can pick it up like we saw on Thursday, that's a good sign for them. Because obviously in this ACC, there's a lot of different type of teams in this conference. Obviously, the defensive stalwarts of Notre Dame and Maryland, the high scorers, obviously, like Syracuse this year, and Duke. I mean, if Virginia can get that identity maybe if their defense can, bounce back where they can, I guess, that dangerous team where they can win in different types of fashions, that would be very good for them. But it's good to know that they have arguably the best two-man game with Pinnell and Cockerton right now. I mean, they combined for 7 goals, and they were pretty dang good. Obviously, Pinnell being the guy that can create opportunities by himself and for his teammates, and Cockerton being arguably the best finisher in the nation. It's very two good assets to have in your pocket.
Yeah, definitely. And just to give our viewers, not our viewers, we're on radio, our listeners, a quick update on some games that are actually already happening. Believe it or not, 2 games started at 11 o'clock. UMass is up 3-0 on Army right now at the end of the first quarter. I think that's kind of something we may or may not have expected, but in another game that we definitely would have picked Towson to win. Towson's up 3-1 on High Point. You can watch both games streaming. 6:29 left in the first quarter there. 3 goals from all different players. Justin Mabus has the most recent tally for Towson. Not to be an alliteration there, but, I guess early look from those games. Any surprises?
Not really, although I think the scoreboard I'm looking at has it wrong. I have Towson losing 3-2, but I looked on their Twitter. Yeah, it is 3-1 Towson, actually. No surprises. Maybe the fact that UMass already is up 3-0 on Army. I would have expected more. Their faceoff guy, Cavallo, actually, is dominating the faceoff X already. Yeah, he's 4-0.
Right.
Army has not had the ball a lot so far. I'm surprised. They've got a pretty good they've got Gleasner, obviously. So that's a little surprising, I guess, the fact that their offense hasn't been good so far. But it's only the second quarter, though.
Exactly. So we're going to hit a break here, and we'll come back with predictions and an exciting announcement. So as you wait, here's some exciting tunes from Pharrell Williams. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to NCAA Lax Gameday. This is Andrew Goldberg, and as always, I'm joined by John Alfonso Iadavaya. And you can tweet at us at NCAA Lax Gameday, at Goldieberg, at John_A_I Devaya, as always. So, we spent the first half of the show looking back on the weekend, or I should say the week that was in college lacrosse. And now we're going to go to predicting and breaking down the games for today as well as tomorrow. And we'll make an exciting announcement for you guys in the middle. And I just want to make a correction. John, you were correct in what you said about High Point beating Towson right now. High Point's up 3-2, like you said.
Yeah, last year actually, don't forget that Towson actually lost to High Point in one of their opening games, a low point for them before they completely turned it around. Update right now, DiNapoli just tied it for the Tigers at the end of the first quarter, so it's 3-3 at the end of one between High Point and Towson entering the second.
Yeah, just saw that update. I was just reporting to give you some credit because, I can't read good. So,
That's all right.
First, so we have about, how many games we have going on today? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 12 games going on today, 2 of which have already started, as we mentioned. So let's go with the 2 games that are already occurring. Towson and High Point, who you got? And I mean, it's kind of bush league to do the prediction now the game started, but who would you have picked to start? I mean, I would have Towson.
I would have said Towson. I can't see them lose a second year in a row to Towson to start the year. That's the thing, though, that's interesting is the fact that we can see Towson early on, like last year, struggles to, push off from shore. I'm sure that Coach Allen doesn't want to see the same slow start that his team had to go through last year. I'm sure they'll be able to pull it out. In terms of the UMass Army game, I probably would have gone with UMass, though I would like to see if Army can stay competitive in it. They have a few X factors that can make the difference in their goaltender and their face-off man, but so far both haven't been able to step up to task as it's been mostly UMass in this game, but Gleasner just added a goal, so it's 3-1 right now. They trail at Mickey Stadium.
Yeah, and also Calvello, face-off man for UMass, was perfect on the afternoon so far, according to the Twitter updates. I think. Do you think that losing to High Point last year helped them so early, kind of refocus, because maybe they had some expectations, going in like, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to be pretty good. High Point sucks. Their first-year program, and we're going to romp all over them. Then you get a reality check, and it's like, wow, let's take a step back here. We haven't accomplished anything. We got to do the little things to get it right. And, here we go. We got back to the grind and kind of really sort some things out.
I would agree with that. Towson is, they're an established program. High Point's still getting off the ground. This is a game that realistically they should control, should win. It's one of those early games for a bigger program to, get their team a little confident going on. And a loss like that last year is a game that could either sink or rise, save your season in a way. Because, like you said, it makes you realize a reality check of where you are, what you need to accomplish, or it just sucks the confidence out of you, and it's hard to build off that. So, I mean, being the first game of the season, I doubt that would be the case, but you never know.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that Towson, especially this year with the high hopes that you and I both have for them, especially when we brought Coach Sean Nadalin on with us a couple weeks ago. He talked about handling expectations and what they expect this year from the program and their high hopes. So for them to lose this game, I mean, I don't think it would be a good start at all, obviously. And I think, for Towson, for a program trying to get into that, maybe break the mold and get into the top 10-ish, going into the future as a program, would kind of take a hit on them. That's my last thought on it. But I agree with you in terms of Army and UMass. I think UMass will win this game pretty handily. They were a tough team when I saw them in fall ball at the Johns Hopkins fall ball tournament where they played Rutgers and Fairfield as well. I forget who got hurt in the first 5 minutes of the game, but I think it was I don't even know. I think it was Smith. I forget his name, but it looked like one of their more important players, and he like went down with a shoulder injury. Obviously, he's healed by now, and it didn't seem too major, but they're a tough team, and the coach there does a really good job of it. Before we get into the really big games this week, St. Joseph's and Lafayette. I mean, not exactly, getting the lighting the fire under you to watch the game. But who do you have in this one?
Oh, I'll go Lafayette. I know St. Joe's is starting to turn it around, especially now they have finally escaped the death trap that is the CAA. But I would say Lafayette in this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you here. I think Lafayette is just a little bit better than St. Joe's. St. Joe's really hasn't been a great program. They've kind of been in the bottom tier for a while. Not that I'm saying Lafayette's been that much better, but Lafayette, I think they're a little bit better than St. Joseph overall. In terms of like just going through real quick, in terms of games that I think you and I both will just agree on wholeheartedly. Virginia and Richmond. I mean, Virginia coming off a big win. Richmond first year program. I think Virginia wins there pretty handily, right?
I'll agree. I wrote the preview for the website for today's game, and I think early on it could be interesting since obviously Virginia's coming off such an emotional roller coaster from Thursday. They only have 2 days rest, so maybe Richmond catches them early in the first quarter, build some confidence up, and see where we go from there. But I agree. I would think the Cavaliers will handle this one as the game goes along.
Yeah, and I think that I do agree with you. Big wins. I don't even know what you consider that game because you're winning 12-4 and then you give it up and have to come back and almost lose the game. Probably could have lost the game by a referee error. And then you come back to win it. I mean, that's a high emotional game. You come back 2 days later. How do you handle that? That's a lot. It speaks a lot about your coaching and your leadership too. But Richmond first year program, Virginia, they are who they are. So Virginia wins there for me as well. Navy VMI, I think Navy just walks away with it. VMI is one of the, they're not very good. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, well, no argument here. Actually, I will say that I would like to see if Navy's offense can get going. Obviously, that was a big struggle for them. Let's see if they can hit double digits in this.
Right, and that was one of your big kind of New Year's resolutions or Christmas gifts when we did it about 2 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about, they need to throw battleships at the goal to try to score.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One game that's kind of interesting to me, a battle of first and second, essentially young programs in Mercer and Boston. What do you think about this game?
This is actually a very intriguing matchup. I wouldn't mind actually watching this game to see how it does. We've known Boston University for a while. It's been going to join. They have some transfers, obviously, that came up with a lot of new faces, especially those from the club team. And Mercer in their second year didn't get off, obviously, struggles for a first year, which is to be expected. I'm fairly interested, honestly, because I think it could be an exciting game. These are two teams that are still just getting off the ground, see what can happen from it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it'll be a good game because both teams are very young in terms of where they're coming from in their process in terms of building their programs. Boston first year, Mercer second year. I think Mercer's only win was over Wagner, who only had 1 or 2 wins last year too. Interesting side note. Mercer head coach at Goucher, Landmark Conference against my school, Drew. Head coach at Wagner was my assistant coach, Matt Poske, current MLL guy. Fun little tangent. As for a prediction, John, I'm going with Mercer. Who do you got?
I'll go with Boston University. I would like to see them get a first win. I kind of like them.
A little shock the world here?
Yeah, I mean, it's really shocked the world if they win their first game over Mercer, though. If anything, I say it would be I'd say it would be a feel good win, obviously.
Yeah, I mean it's not. Look, we're not talking about colossal upset here, but for a first year program, I feel like it's very tough to come in and compete at
Mm-hmm.
a high level against a program that's been a couple years into the mix here, like Mercer.
Mm-hmm.
One other game, real quick, that we'll both pick the winner for and be agreed on here is Maryland Mount St. Mary's. I think the only thing that we'll really look at, which won't give us a really good indication, but it'll give us kind of a little bit of an indication, is how this young, talented #1 recruiting class that comes in from Maryland, how they play and handle the college spotlight.
Agreed.
Granted, it's against Mount St. Mary's, but still.
Yeah, I am 100% agreement with you. These freshmen need to hit the ground running, need to just get their bearings right. I'm sure a team like Mount St. Mary's, it's a good start for them to get it against.
Yeah, I mean,
One,
sorry, keep going.
I know you finished your point.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, look, the defense is very strong. It's one of the top defensive units in what you and I both outlined at the beginning of the year. Mount St. Mary's isn't a terrible, terrible team. They do have some all-conference guys, and they're going to compete for their conference, I think, in the Atlantic Sun, I want to say. Is that right?
Mount St. Mary's? No, they're in the Northeast, I think.
The Northeast, yeah, but I think they have some guys that are going to compete with, like, Bryan in that conference.
Oh yeah,
So,
they'll be
you know.
competitive, I would say. But
Right.
they lost a lot of seniors though from last year though, so
Right.
they're going to be a little rebuilding in a way, but they'll be competitive in their own conference.
Right. You had a point, though, about that game.
No, I was going to bring up another game that I guess we can drive by quickly, and that's #7 Penn State taking on Michigan. Uh, this battle of soon-to-be Big Ten rivals. I think it's safe to say Penn State will probably win. What I'm interested in this game, though, is the goaltending for this team. As obviously, we know Michigan loses their star goaltender in Logan. He's out for the year. So who comes in and who will be between the pipes? It's looking like it's going to be Pennsylvania freshman, number 67 by Inside Lacrosse's incoming freshman class, Robbie Zanino, I think it is. He's a projected starting goaltender for today. And he's actually had a pretty good credentials coming in from high school as well. So I think we'll have to see how he does against that. I mean, otherwise, I expect Penn State will probably win this convincingly, but I'd like to see if Michigan can keep it close to show some growth after they in their third year now as a program.
Yeah, and I mean, just from a standpoint of seeing how Penn State plays, obviously they're not going to play in their tournament. I kind of want to see how they start out their season. Do they come out with kind of like a pissed off attitude where it's kind of like an us against the world thing? Like, granted, they're not an underdog. I mean, they're a really good team. They're expected to make the NCAA tournament as an at-large team, but kind of being forced out of the conference the way they are, I don't know, maybe it puts a chip on their shoulder. Michigan, obviously a program that you and I kind of, in terms of the growth of the sport, I think both of us really want to see eventually succeed, especially now. Hopefully they're getting some momentum. I think you see that in what, like you said, number 68 recruit. I mean, they're going to get top recruits because they're a big school, big, athletic school, big party school, all that stuff. You would expect them to grow in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I think that once they can start getting competitive within the top 20, that's going to start opening the door for those other big schools in the Midwest, in the middle of the country, even the SEC possibly, but we'll have to see how that goes. Quick score update that I just noticed. Army has now tied the game. They're tied 3-3. Gleason got a goal and an assist now to help out. And Towson just took the lead 4-3. Tom DiNapoli with 8 shots already. Dang.
Guy's feeling it, man. He
Yeah.
wants his G's, baby. He wants to get those points up.
I mean, if you got the hot stick and you know how to use it, why not? He's obviously we say he's one of the more dynamic players coming in this year on offense. Up and High Point just tied at 4-4 right off the faceoff. So
Yeah,
that's
so a lot of close games to start.
Something to keep an eye on for this one.
Especially going in. One last game, though, that I think you and I both agree on. I know we're saying this a lot. Actually, 2. All right, I'm just going to say 2 so our listeners don't get tired of hearing it. Rutgers, Manhattan at Rutgers, and Lehigh at Marquette. I think we both go with Rutgers and Lehigh, no?
I'll go with Lehigh. Obviously, Marquette's a very blue chip type of team. They'll make it close. I think Lehigh will win, but it will be a lot closer than people think about that. I can actually see Marquette honestly sitting on the outside top 20 in maybe a year or two. Angelo's got them going in the right direction. And in terms of the Rutgers Manhattan game, I think that's going to be a lot closer than some people think. I'll be honest, I don't buy the hype with Rutgers at all when it comes to their team. Uh, I just don't know. I just don't see they have like those explosive players, those X factor type guys that are going to make a difference, and especially once they go to the Big Ten next year. I mean, how are you going to survive? How is that team going to survive in that conference? Is my thought. I think they'll win against Manhattan, but I don't think I'm confident that they'll pull away easily. I think they're going to have to earn that against the Jaspers.
I actually disagree with you on this. I do agree with you heading into next year that they may struggle because of the talent they have this year. Their talent this year is really, really, I mean, it's strong. It's stronger than I think it's been in a while at Rutgers. You know, they went 2-13 last year, which is terrible. You know, Bill Parcells said, "You are what your record says you are." So look, they aren't a great team, but if you look inside the numbers, they did lose a lot of their games to like Syracuse and Notre Dame and everybody else on their schedule. They lost a lot of those games by 1 or 2 goals. So, I mean, a lot of that was inexperience. They bring back 98% of their scoring this year. Joseph Nardella is a fantastic face-off man. Once you get past Fowler and Massa at Duke and Bryant, respectively, this guy's really, really good. Mm-hmm. And he's actually an X factor for them, I think. Chris Alleyne, I don't even know how to say his last name, in goal. He's an honorable honorable mention All-American. Manhattan really just has nobody. They lost their top 2 or 3 scorers last year. I think this game's a blowout. In terms of the Lehigh game, you know, Lehigh has the advantage of having game film to evaluate and go off of. So I think, you know, that bodes well for them. As for if it's close, you know, I don't expect a big score, but I think it's like a 10-5 game. It's maybe something similar to what they saw against Furman.
Mm-hmm. I'll go with that.
Yeah. So the last 3 games on the schedule here for Saturday, we have Air Force Denver, Bucknell Delaware, Colgate Bryant. All those games I think are really, really good, especially Bucknell Delaware and Colgate Bryant. I was doing the previews for In Lacrosse We Trust this week. Going back to last year, both games were very, very close. Bryant and Colgate have switched wins. Neither home team has won in this series so far, even though it's only been 3 games. And last year was an OT winner. The year before was by 2 goals by Bryant. Bucknell and Delaware last year was really, really close as well. I think those are 2 under-the-radar games that could be really good today.
Agreed. Delaware always keeps it close, and a team like Bucknell, Bucknell can play their system, their 10-man ride game. I think Delaware's actually a team that might have some things that could some criteria that could actually break that and play a physical game against Bucknell. I expect that to be a lot closer. I do think though that Bucknell can come out on top. I think Bryant might actually be Colgate, though. To me, they've got, obviously we know who they have at the faceoff X. I do like some of their scores, though, and Colgate to me is just, since the loss of Baum, I don't know, this team just doesn't seem to have the same spark that they had a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they do bring back Walsh, who was fantastic sophomore attackman for them last year to go along with Baum. He actually only had 1 point less than Baum. I mean, Baum grabbed the headlines, but you could argue that Walsh was just as important, I mean, from a points perspective, and had just as great of a season, obviously.
Yeah, 37 goals for Walsh. I mean, he really did step up. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I do remember that he did there were some games, actually, where Baum, while he did put up points, was limited, and Walsh ended up being big. Don't forget, he actually was Baum played a vital role in their upset over UMass in the NCAA in 2011. But I think Walsh played a very underrated role in securing that victory as well.
Oh yeah, and defensively also Colgate brings Bobby Lawrence. He's a local guy by me here in Morse County in Summit. Top defenseman here in the state. He's one of the top defensemen in the country. He's third team preseason All-American. But I mean, I just think that looking at this game, the Face-Off X is going to be huge. They got dominated last year at the Face-Off X. Colgate did by Massa. Massa comes back. Same guy from Colgate comes back, or I think he graduated. And I think Bryant's going to run away with it. Or not run away with this game. I think it's going to be very close, like the two previous meetings, and the trend for a road team to win to continue today. So I'm going to take Bryant, and Kevin Massa is just going to give them so many possessions today.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just can't see Massa losing at all in this matchup, and I think he's just going to – I think possession will be heavily favored toward Bryant. I think that's what will give him the win in the end.
Right. As for Bucknell, Delaware, I mean, as I alluded to, I mean, you know, Bucknell is a really high-powered offense. I think they're one of the, I guess, an underrated offense. Obviously, it's led by Dixon, but they do bring back Heritage as well, Todd Heritage. Delaware has a really strong defense, though, and Connor Peaks is playing. He played well last week. Granted, it was against High Point. He had 15 saves, a really high save percentage. But even last year when he took over in goal, he really played well as well. So I'm going to take Bucknell in a really close one here.
Agreed. Agree with that. Bucknell wins this in my eyes, but I do think what advantage Delaware has is that I think I like Delaware's midfield actually over Bucknell. Bucknell's got a young midfield. They're going to grow. They're going to get better. But that's the one thing I've learned with the Blue Hens through all my years following them. It's just they always have those stingy guys up top playing between the 30s that make life a living hell for anyone who's playing against them. And that's the Blue Hen style, basically, winning the battle between the 30s. And that's why I think that they might be able to break Bucknell's system of riding. Might be able to fight off their physical play because Delaware plays a physical blue chip type of game as well. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I'll say maybe a 3-goal game. Maybe a few times might be a 1-goal early on. But I think that Bucknell out-muscles them in the end and outskills them in the end as well. Because Delaware has been lacking a top talent, I would say, for a little while. Obviously, since they won the CAA or were dominating the CAA in terms of just winning the conferences. But since those runs are now over, they've really fallen on hard times.
Yeah, definitely. I can't remember the last time Delaware's been kind of respected in lacrosse world. Like, you know, if someone says, "Hey, I'm going to Delaware," you're like, "Oh, wow, you know, that's pretty good." But then you think about it for a little bit, and you're like, they're okay.
Yeah, 2010 was really the last time that they were because obviously those Hofstra teams following the 2008 championship, those 2 years Delaware won, and then 2011. I keep forgetting if they won 2011. Actually, I think it might have been Drexel. But those 3 years, Delaware kept surprising everyone by being Hofstra and always finding a way to get into the tournament somehow or making these big upsets. Obviously, and since 2010, 2011, they've kind of just hit hard times.
Yeah. And so the last game here, Air Force Denver. A lot of the experts, quote unquote, are saying that this game is going to be really close. Especially after last year, I think Denver was losing heading into either the second half or the fourth quarter by like 3 or 4 goals, and they ended up coming back and winning. Obviously, it's kind of like a Western, quote-unquote, rivalry because both schools are in Colorado in that area. So, I mean, who do you have here?
I'll say Denver. I think Denver's got it, but we talked about it before. Airfield's got a very potent attack unit. All those guys are back. We know what they can do. They can score in high numbers. You know what you're going to get with Mike Crampton, Keith Dreyer setting things up, and obviously you got Tommy McKee as well. And I just haven't been sold on Denver's defense ever since Tierney came back, went there. And I know he's a defensive guy. Their goaltending is good, but I just don't know. I just don't feel confident in their defense usually. I think it's good enough to get a win, but good enough to win a championship, still have to be convinced. But in this game against Air Force, I think that they'll be able to outscore them.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. Now that you think about it, that's a really good point. I mean, Denver, for the greatest thing about Princeton back in the day, our coach used to tell us, is that they were the best slide and recovery team in the nation. So when someone got beat, they would cover up the mistake and they wouldn't get burned by it. And, over the past couple of years, Denver's defense really hasn't been great. I mean, look at last year. Granted, it was against Albany, one of the best offenses maybe that we've seen in the last 4, 5, 6 years. But they didn't play well. But I'll agree with you. I mean, Denver, I think, will win. I think it'll be interesting to see how all these freshmen come in and play, as well as Bobzian, who's coming over from, I think it was Hartford, where he was the Rookie of the Year in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look to Sunday, not a lot of games that are highlight games, but the biggest game, just as we end our predictions here in the show, Hopkins at Ohio State really highlights tomorrow's games. It's going to be on ESPNU or ESPN3, I think. Starts at 11:30. I think there are a lot of questions for both sides. The biggest thing for Hopkins is they lost a lot of talent. Who replaces Tucker Durkin? What happens with the offense? Ohio State, who replaces Logan Shush? And what happens with their offense as well?
My other thing also for Hopkins is who takes over for Pierce Bassett as well between the pipes. I mean, I was never a big fan of him, but I mean, he brought consistency at least to the net. I mean, Petromalo never really replaced him that much. He always was confident in him. I think that's going to be an area they have to answer. I do think with Ohio State, they still have enough pieces, especially in the defensive end. They're still going to be solid with Dudden, and their long poles are going to be good enough to win games. I'll be honest, I think Ohio State might win this game.
Yeah, I think it's at Ohio State too, no?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, like, I really want to take Ohio State. I mean, look, I saw Hopkins play. They really did not impress me. They also, take from it what you will, that it's a scrimmage. They lost to Penn State 12-6. I mean, that's a pretty sizable amount for a Hopkins team. I don't know, man. Like, Hopkins is kind of like teetering on, some quote-unquote troubled times, even though they're bringing in ridiculous recruiting classes all the time. I'm going to take Ohio State as well in this game. I just have questions about that Hopkins offense.
Look,
Stanwyck, but
yeah, I mean, you're not wrong to question it, honestly. They did change up their offense during the offseason, I did notice, because we saw last year that they were really lethargic at points. They really relied a lot on one-on-one, not enough passing, I would say, but they've really sped things up now. And they're getting their attackmen a lot more involved, which is something we haven't really seen from Hopkins in a long time. Again, it goes back to what I've learned is that the biggest players that come out of Hopkins are always their midfielders. They're always some of the best you'll ever see. But really, since Palmer, when is like the last real great Hopkins attackman that you know of?
You'd have to go back a while. We only have a minute here, but nothing comes to mind. I'm just going to put it that way. So with a minute left, here's the exciting announcement. Me and John want to have you listeners send in your lacrosse picks. We're going to try to get a tournament challenge type thing like we do, like ESPN does for their March Madness, but we want to do it all season long. Me and John want to raise the stakes, though. We're going to have whoever has the best number or best record at the end of the year is going to do something, something similar to Mike and Mike in the Morning, where we have a wager on it and we have to do something. We're going to film it for the website. We want you guys to tweet at us, send us your picks for today and for, every Saturday. And, I think it's something exciting that we can do for you guys. And a lot of you guys are knowledgeable about college lacrosse. So we want to get you guys involved. We want to make it fun for you guys. And we want to have fun, too. And plus, I'm going to be John, so I'm not really too worried about doing anything crazy here.
Keep telling yourself that, pal.
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to win, too. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Another great edition of NCAA Lax Gameday. You can tweet at us, as always, at NCAA Lax Gameday. Enjoy the games today. A lot of them are streaming. on Inside Lacrosse. You can look at them for the sites and everything. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back next Saturday for another awesome Saturday of college lax, baby.